Competition is loud. It moves fast. It compares constantly. It calculates every interaction. But calm strength does none of that. Most men are trained, socially, culturally, instinctively, to believe that attraction is a battlefield, that attention must be earned through performance, that presence must be amplified, that status must be displayed. So when another man appears, something tightens inside them. They speak louder. They joke more. They invest faster. They subtly try to outshine. And in doing so, they unknowingly lower their position. Because competition for attention signals something deeper than ambition. It signals fear. Fear of being invisible. Fear of not measuring up. Fear of losing before the connection even forms. And fear has a frequency. It leaks through tone, through posture, through timing. You may think you are showing effort, but she feels urgency. You may think you are displaying value, but she senses insecurity beneath it. This is where Stoic philosophy quietly separates strength from noise. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that a stable life requires very little external validation. What is needed is internal order. The moment you stop competing, something subtle shifts in your nervous system. You breathe slower. You respond instead of react. You observe instead of measure. And that steadiness feels different. Because here is the hidden truth. Women do not respond to intensity alone. They respond to containment. Containment is emotional self-regulation. It is composure under subtle pressure. It is the absence of frantic comparison. When another man speaks and you remain unaffected, you communicate abundance. Not financial abundance, energetic abundance. You are not scrambling for position. You are not trying to secure the spotlight. You are simply rooted in yourself. And rooted energy attracts. Now understand this clearly. Non-competition does not mean passivity. It does not mean disinterest. It does not mean laziness. It means your effort is clean. When you engage, it is because you want to, not because you fear losing ground. Epictetus taught that no man is free who is not master of himself. Competition often makes a man a slave to comparison, a slave to perceived rivals, a slave to outcomes. You check her reactions, you scan the room, you adjust your personality to outperform. That is not power. That is dependency disguised as dominance. But when you stop competing, your attention becomes voluntary. You ask questions because you are curious, not because you need to score points. You speak calmly, not because you're trying to impress. You allow pauses, not because you calculated them, but because you are comfortable inside them. And comfort inside silence is rare. Most men rush to fill space. They over-explain. They escalate charm. They try to keep momentum alive at all costs. But silence is not a threat unless you are afraid of losing control. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. When you perceive competition, much of it lives in imagination. You assume she is comparing. You assume you are being evaluated. You assume you must outperform. And those assumptions create internal pressure. Pressure alters behavior. Behavior reveals insecurity. Insecurity quietly reduces attraction. The paradox is simple. The less you treat the situation as a contest, the less it feels like one. Because when you stop reacting to perceived rivals, you project steadiness. You do not monitor who she laughs at longer. You do not adjust when someone else tells a story. You do not rush to reclaim attention. You stay in your frame. And frame is everything. Frame is your internal posture toward yourself. When your frame is dependent on being the most impressive man in the room, it is fragile. When your frame is rooted in self-direction, it is immovable. This is the beginning of Stoic attraction. It is not about withholding. It is about not overextending. It is about allowing interest to breathe instead of squeezing it with effort. The man who competes is subtly asking to be chosen. The man who stands calmly is evaluating alignment as well. That shift alone changes the entire dynamic, because now you are not trying to win. You are simply present. And presence without pressure carries weight. Most people feel it instantly, even if they can't explain why. Competition tries to prove worth. Stoicism assumes worth. And assumption of worth is quieter, steadier, and far more powerful. This is where it begins. Not by withholding, not by acting distant, but by releasing the need to secure position. Because the moment you no longer chase the spotlight loses control over you. Once you remove competition from your mindset, something deeper begins to reorganize. Your attention returns to where it always belonged, to your own direction. Most men lose attraction not because they lack qualities, but because they abandon themselves the moment a woman enters the frame. Their schedule bends, their priorities shift, their discipline softens, their focus fragments. Why? Because competition pulls their awareness outward. What is she responding to? Who else is around her? What works better? What gets more attention? And the more attention moves outward, the weaker inner structure becomes. Stoicism does the opposite. Epictetus did not teach indifference to life. He taught control over response. When you stop competing, you stop monitoring. And when you stop monitoring, you regain energy. Energy that was previously spent scanning rivals is redirected towards self-mastery. Your body language shifts. You no longer lean forward in urgency. You sit back in grounded certainty. Your speech slows. You no longer insert yourself into every moment. You contribute when necessary, not compulsively. And that change is immediately felt, because competition creates subtle tension. Non-competition creates space, and space creates gravity. Now consider something subtle. When a man competes, he performs value. When a man does not compete, he embodies value. Performance is fragile. It depends on reaction. Embodiment is stable. It exists whether acknowledged or not. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to focus on what is within his control, his character, his actions, his discipline. He did not instruct himself to control perception. This distinction matters. When you compete for interest, you are trying to influence perception. When you stand in stoic presence, you refine character instead, and character radiates without effort. Now let's address effort itself. Effort is not the enemy. Desperation is. There's a difference between intentional engagement and strategic overinvestment. When you are competing, effort becomes transactional. You give attention expecting return. You initiate expecting escalation. You compliment expecting reciprocation. And expectation tightens the interaction. But when you release competition, effort becomes voluntary. You engage because you enjoy the exchange. You step back because you have other priorities. You text because you want to, not because silence makes you anxious. That shift feels authentic, and authenticity lowers resistance. Seneca spoke about freedom as the highest internal state. Freedom is visible. A man who does not need to win the room moves differently inside it. He does not rush to correct others. He does not subtly boast. He does not compare stories to elevate his status. He allows others to shine without shrinking himself. And this balance is rare, because most men equate value with visibility. But value that requires spotlight is unstable. True value stands whether noticed or not. Now, another important shift happens when you stop competing. You stop reacting to perceived threats. If another man is charismatic, you do not feel urgency. If someone else receives attention, you do not panic. If she laughs with someone else, your internal state remains intact. That emotional stability sends a powerful signal. I am not in contest mode.
I am in alignment mode. Alignment mode asks a different question. Not how do I win her, but are we aligned at all? That single shift restores your authority, because competition is reactive. Alignment is selective. When you compete, you are trying to be chosen. When you evaluate alignment, you are choosing as well, and choice carries weight. Women feel when a man is selecting, not scrambling. It creates a subtle polarity. She senses that your attention is intentional, not automatic, and intentional attention is valuable. This is where curiosity begins to grow on her side, because calm confidence introduces unpredictability. You are not reacting to every stimulus, you are not escalating based on every signal. You remain measured, and measured responses create intrigue. She begins to wonder, what moves him? What earns his deeper attention? What actually shifts his energy? When you are not easily impressed, not easily threatened, not easily triggered, you become emotionally scarce. Not cold, not distant, emotionally scarce in reactivity, and emotional scarcity builds curiosity. Now understand, this is not a tactic. If you fake detachment, it will feel hollow. Stoicism is not performance of indifference, it is the practice of inner sufficiency. Inner sufficiency means you enjoy connection, but you do not depend on it. You appreciate interest, but you do not require validation. You participate fully, but you remain rooted independently. That independence creates calm magnetism, because desperation repels. Competition contains subtle desperation, even when hidden behind charm. When you no longer compete, your presence becomes steady. Steady men are rare, and rarity draws attention naturally. This is not about ignoring her. It is about not orbiting her. It is about keeping your axis centered. When your life direction remains unchanged regardless of external competition, your stability becomes visible, and visible stability feels safe. Not in a dull way, safe in a grounded way. The kind of safety that allows attraction to develop without pressure. You no longer try to be the most impressive, you become the most internally aligned. And alignment outlasts performance every time, because performance must constantly adjust. Alignment simply stands. That is the deeper layer of non-competition. It is not withdrawal, it is sovereignty. It is the quiet understanding that value does not chase recognition. It refines itself, and what is refined, eventually, is recognized.
When you truly stop competing, the dynamic does not explode, it settles. And in that settling, power becomes quiet. Most men misunderstand this phase. They assume that if they are no longer competing, they must withdraw completely. They think Stoicism means distance. They believe calm means cold. But Stoicism is not emotional absence, it is emotional governance. Marcus Aurelius never argued for disengagement from life, he argued for self-command within it. So what happens when you stop competing and remain engaged? The energy shifts from pursuit to presence. You begin to notice something subtle. When you are no longer trying to win her attention, you actually hear her more clearly. When you are no longer measuring yourself against others, your posture relaxes. When you are no longer chasing advantage, your tone becomes grounded, and grounded tone carries authority. Now let's examine something most men fear. What if she gives attention to someone else? Competition says, respond immediately, increase effort, reclaim position. Stoicism says, observe. Epictetus taught that we control our judgments, not external events. If she laughs with another man, that is an external event. Your internal reaction is yours. When you do not react impulsively, when your breathing remains even, when your demeanor does not tighten, you communicate something extraordinary. I am not threatened by possibility. An absence of threat perception signals deep confidence. Confidence without comparison is quiet, but it is heavy. It creates gravity. And gravity does not chase, it pulls. Now consider this deeper layer. When you compete, you subconsciously frame her as a prize. When you stop competing, you frame her as a person. That shift changes your gaze. You are no longer scanning for approval. You are evaluating compatibility. Does her energy match yours? Does her presence add calm or chaos? Does interaction feel reciprocal? This is the moment where Stoicism transforms attraction into discernment. Seneca wrote that a wise man chooses carefully where he invests himself. When you stop competing, you become selective. Not arrogant, selective. You invest slowly. You reveal gradually. You do not overshare to accelerate connection. You allow interaction to unfold. And in slow unfolding, tension builds naturally, because urgency disappears. And when urgency disappears, space opens. Space allows curiosity to breathe. Now here is the final transformation. When you no longer compete, you stop trying to control outcomes. You are not trying to win her interest. You are expressing your authentic rhythm. If alignment develops, you welcome it. If it does not, you remain centered. This neutrality is powerful because neediness is predictable, competition is predictable, performance is predictable, but calm certainty is unpredictable. You do not react when expected. You do not escalate when tested. You do not shrink when compared. And unpredictability without instability becomes magnetic. She begins to feel something unfamiliar. You are attentive but not attached, present but not pressuring, confident but not boasting. That combination is rare. Now let us bring this into one clear truth. Competition is rooted in fear of insufficiency. Non-competition is rooted in sufficiency. When you are sufficient within yourself, you are not racing against other men. You are refining yourself. Your discipline becomes more important than dominance. Your direction becomes more important than display. Your composure becomes more important than conquest. And this composure is what shifts attraction. Because when you stand calmly in your own life, deeply focused, internally ordered, emotionally regulated, attention moves differently toward you, not because you demanded it, not because you outperformed, but because you were not trying to secure it. That is the paradox of Stoic strength. The less you compete for validation, the less you depend on reaction. The less you depend on reaction, the more stable you appear. The more stable you appear, the safer you feel. And safety is the soil where mature attraction grows. So this is Stoicism in practice, not indifference, not emotional withdrawal, but grounded sovereignty. You stop proving, you stop comparing, you stop chasing position. And when a man stands in quiet self-command, something shifts in the room. He does not move toward attention. Attention slowly reorients toward him, not because he fought for it, but because he did not need to.